Well, folks, it's time to kick it old school. Yeah.
Every time I see us do the chest bump at the end, I'm thinking you gave a lot more energy on that chest bump. I'm just kind of standing there and flying back. Like,
well, I lift things, so it's Herb and Raj. So
okay.
How are you doing?
I'm doing
we had
good.
a debate
Herb,
before we got on air about how professional we are.
Yeah.
Came out to about 0.
I feel like we're semi-professionals. Now, Saturday night, that's a completely different type level of professionalism. For those who have not turned into a sort of Saturday night show, you're missing something. So,
give the quick hellos. What's up, Kat? How are you doing?
Roll Tide to you.
Carol said, "What's up? Hi.
Good evening,
Herb
Carol.
Doing great. Lady Alpha, what's
Lady
up?
Alpha's
the Alpha
in the
pools
building. The Alpha what?
It didn't click up. The Alpha pools are in the building.
Lady Alpha, aka Lady A, aka Lady, aka the first lady of the Herb and Rodg podcast. What do you think about that? Too much? I just want to say before.
No, I love AKAs.
Play this with the chat lady. Oh, we'll put that in the mix one day. We'll figure that out.
Who's the fourth?
We got Lady Alpha, Kat, Carol. I don't know who the fourth is.
If she says a guy's name, they're gonna really hate you.
Yes. We'll figure it out. But that's a good. Oh, Sadie. She mentioned Sadie.
Bitch.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Lady Alpha, we're definitely gonna take that into consideration, and we will definitely implement that one into one of the shows.
Oh wow. Well, that's fine. Roger's birthday bash is next week, so he has to be the one playing the games. So guess who's gonna be the first guinea pig?
I won't be here next week. I'll be on vacation.
you cannot miss your own birthday bash.
All right.
Speaking of which, he isn't here, but Randy just had his birthday. Was that yesterday? A couple days ago?
Yes. Happy. Yeah, I think we told him on the last show. But yeah, happy birthday, Randy. Hope you had a good day.
All right. Raj, enough of our goofy looking faces. You got to get to the main man. He's been on the show so long that now there's no more special intros. I just tell the truth about him, and he comes on. So this was maybe the only person on the net that I saw told us that Grubb was still coming back to Tuscaloosa after everyone else had been fussed at and said no, and even former Alabama players have said it's not going to happen.
And we know we heard some people even telling us like, "Hey, it's not going to happen. Let's just stop discussing it." But look what happened,
and not in a nice way either.
Yes.
So. Frequent contributor to the show. What's up, Bama Beat? How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey guys, good to see y'all.
Likewise,
it feels weird to have a normal intro.
I know. You know what? It's funny you said that. It's funny you said that because after Herb talked about the Ryan Grubb thing, I was thinking, okay, what are the other two things? But then you brought him on. I was like, oh wow. Okay.
That's what happens when you've been on so much that you're pretty much family at this point. So we're like, hey, here you go.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Yeah. Well, that's just where we show some love, man. We say, hey, we appreciate you always coming on. You always give us some good information. So let's start with the very first thing we talked about. You said you didn't make it to A-Day this past weekend, but you are traveling. But you had some thoughts about the format anyway and stuff that you've heard already.
Yeah, I just hate that we didn't get a real A-Day game. That's becoming pretty common across the country. To be honest, I haven't heard a great argument for it to this point. I know the popular argument is that, it kind of showcases your roster for other teams to pick from, but, I don't see how it's really much different than, the little bit of media access that is offered. There's certainly ways for these coaches to, get insight from practice and kind of get those insider tidbits. So I don't know that I buy that argument that the game is too much of a recruiting opportunity for other schools. So just hate to see the fan get the short end of the stick again.
Yeah.
At
I
the end
don't
of the day-
see where like the thought of recruiting will have a deleterious effect on your roster to where you can't have a game anymore. But go ahead, Rod. You had a question?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, if another school wants to recruit you, and if you call it tamper, whatever the term is that they want to use, they're going to do that anyway, whether they watch you play a Saturday night or Saturday afternoon scrimmage game or whatever. They're still going to reach out to players that they missed out in the earlier recruitment or guys that they're still pursuing. It's going to happen whether there's an 8A game or not. So, yeah, I agree with Bama Beat there. It's still going to happen. So,
Yeah.
I just hate it again from my end because, I mean, out here in Texas, I look forward to watching the games on TV.
Right.
I set aside time to do that, but this year just was unable to do that.
Yeah. And how often would recruiting based off of the spring game really led you astray anyway? So we'd be in a lot of trouble. Ajayi Hall would be your number one wide receiver in a lot of places. So I just don't know that you get a whole lot of extra. So and having been there, man, and seeing the crowd, it's just not the same. It's the energy isn't there. People have asked, like, what do you see? There's a reason why, like 90% of the podcasts coming out of there are talking about quarterbacks, because that's the drill that's easiest to watch, which was Mike has a watch along party he's doing right now. So that's why he can't be here. But we're watching some of the other drills and you're watching a lineman smack a balloon figure or whatever. And you're like, I guess,
Well, it was a thud practice, right? It wasn't even a tackle practice. So it's just hard to get excited about if you're a fan. I think for most people, it's hard to know what you're looking at. So I'll be interested to see, in the next few years, do they stick with, something similar to what they did Saturday? Do they revert back? I think just from what I've heard from the folks that did go, if they kind of stick with what they did Saturday, I think that interest is going to continue to diminish. I think there's a lot of apathy around college football in general anyways, just because of everything that's going on with NIL and everything, transfer portal. So again, like I said, I just hate to see the fan get the short end of the stick. Just it's happening too much these days.
What do you think about them putting some other kind of entertainment in it but still not going to scrimmage? Do you think that'll change anything?
It doesn't for me personally. I'm not really into all the extras. I just want to, watch the spring game. But some people are into that, so maybe that'll help. If they could make it more of a weekend outing, try to schedule it around some other sports. I know it helps when baseball and softball are playing. Maybe people can make a day of it, go down, maybe watch practice in the morning, go watch baseball and softball in the afternoon. So if they're going to stick with the format they use this year, that's probably their best bet. Just kind of schedule around other sports.
And this is our favorite Georgia Bulldog, Carol says, I miss again. I agree.
I do too.
I agree. And for us, it wasn't even that long that we've kind of been into spring games and any of that stuff. But it went last year, and the format had already changed, and it was already confusing. And then this year with the way it was, I feel like there's more people bringing their families out waiting for the autograph signing afterwards than there was to watch it. Because I feel like that's Rod, go ahead.
No, I feel like that was the main reason why a lot of people came anyway. They wanted to kind of get a feeling of what the new format would actually be like in person. And then after they sat down and they started to realize that you're just basically watching the team practice, I'm pretty sure there were some people sitting around like, okay, when can we line up for autographs? That's pretty much it. Like, you're not going to get much out of you're not going to get much out of everything else. So again, I don't know if the format's going to change somewhere down the line, if it's going to go back to the old ways, or if they're going to make minor adjustments and minor tweaks to what we saw this past weekend and kind of either speed it up or adjust it to make it a little more fan friendly or something.
I think more access to the players definitely helps. But imagine you got 5-year-old, 7-year-old, not whatever with you. They're not trying to watch a practice.
No. And they're not
Mom,
they're
like,
not
what are we
sitting
doing?
still. They're not sitting still and just being quiet and just waiting an hour or so. They're like moving around, doing all kinds of stuff. I'm like, what's going on? And as a parent, you're looking at them like, I have no idea. I'm not sure what we're doing right now. So just calm down for a second.
One of our favorite podcasts, man, Sharpshooter Podcast, was catching them a little bit earlier.
Shout out to the Sharpshooters,
man. Love those guys on there. If you're not liking and subscribe, definitely go over and check them out too, man.
Yes.
Be supporters. They did a collab with the Bama Standard recently too as well. But no, good guys, always good information in a fun time. So
Yes.
and
Agreed.
yeah, it feels like the same, especially when Saban was there. I know they tried to show up for the first DeBoer one too as well, but it was just, it just kind of fell flat to me. So, but having said that, what are some of the things that you did hear coming out of, A-Day game and just spring practices in general? What's kind of some tidbits you got for us?
Everybody wants to talk about quarterback. So
are you tired of it
there.
yet, though?
Honestly, no. I love a good quarterback battle. So always happy to talk that position. But Ty Simpson. I think his spring kind of mirrored his career at Alabama so far. Just very assiduous. Persevered through. Kind of sitting behind some guys, and I think he's finally taking that opportunity.
Right.
From everything I've heard, he had a very good spring, pretty sharp, protected the ball well, made good decisions.
Right.
I think that's where he separated himself from the other two at this point. It's
Yes.
just decision-making, command of the offense. So I think he's in strong position as we head into the summer. I do get the feeling around the building down there that obviously they want to keep things open because they don't want to lose guys to transfers in this next portal window. But I do get the feeling that with DeBoer's offense, the quarterback puts a lot on his shoulders. He's sort of more of a playmaker than maybe when you compare it to how the quarterback position played under Saban. So I get the feeling that there's a hope that Ty can take it to the next level, that he can become a playmaker. And I think they feel like Austin Mack and Keelan Russell are probably higher upside guys.
Yeah.
So while I do think they are worried about transfers, I think they want to keep that quarterback competition open and let those guys elevate each other, because I think Ty did a great job this spring of protecting the football and making good decisions, showing command. But I think there's a hope that he can take it to the next level and become more of a playmaker. Right. He's certainly got that opportunity with his athleticism and arm talent.
I agree with that.
I feel
I agree, man. I hate it too. But I understand why the coaches are doing it. Even if they 100% know who the guy is, like you said, you can't do it. So
To be honest, I was surprised we got that little quote out of Grubb yesterday. About if the season started Saturday, that Ty would be the starter. I think we all know that. It just was a little surprising to hear them say it.
It was a little reassuring to hear that, and I feel like Ty is set up for success because not just what he could do on the field, but the weapons around him this year are going into the 2025 season are just going to help him to take the team to the next level. I mean, the running back room is going to be legit and loaded. He's going to have all the wide receivers there, all the playmakers, returning defense. I mean, this team is set up for success. So we don't need Ty to go out here and throw it for 300 to 400 yards a game. Just get rid of the ball, distribute the ball. Be a good leader, be a good vocal leader on the team this year, and take us to the next level. So he's set up for success. And again, when Ryan Grubb came out and made the comment, I think we were all. That's what a lot of us pretty much assumed anyway. So for him to just say that, we kind of say, okay, he finally officially has the keys to the car unless something crazy happens over the next few months.
Yeah. I was just surprised he said it, though, because of the Austin Mack situation, because I feel like Mack is a guy. Sorry, that's where you're going with that.
Yeah, I'll say this. I posted this on Twitter, but and this isn't, breaking any news, but I'll be shocked if Ty Simpson doesn't start the Florida State game, regardless of what happens beyond that, because I see it as, hard for me to see them starting one of the other two. You're going into a hostile environment. We don't really know what Florida State's going to be this year. Ty's got the experience. He's won spring practice basically. So we'll see what happens in the fall. But I just have a hard time, regardless of what the other two do, heading into the summer and heading into the fall, seeing anybody but Ty start that Florida State game. Now we'll see beyond that what happens. But he's certainly put himself in great position.
Yeah, and it's fine. We got flack on another show for saying, "Hey, Ty looked the best." On Saturday. And I was like, look, I've been to one practice, and I'm telling you that on that one practice, Ty looked the best. Because one guy's like, Keelan Russell has more zip on the ball. I said, I 100% agree. That's an exact comment that I made. And you said it earlier. Russell and Mack have higher upsides than Ty. Okay. But that doesn't mean anything in the here and now. Ty is the guy, like you said, right now, I think he does start the first
He's ready now. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's still a long way to go before even that, No, Russell, what is he? He's taking in a couple camps this summer, I believe, or doing some other kind of workouts. And then you never know what the fall is going to carry. So these are just observations from this short period in time. Like you said, I do think Ty is that guy, and he has a little bit of, hey, I can be your game manager because of the things around him. And like you said, he shows a little athleticism. So can he break out if need be? Maybe so. But when I said I'm kind of tired of the quarterback discourse, it's like I'm tired of everybody taking everything and running with it versus, hey man, I'm just talking about what I see in one moment in time.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing with Keelan Russell. I mean, I think we all realize super talented. I mean, there's a reason he was rated where he is. He's got a super live arm. He's got the size, athletic. Right. I think he sees the field well. You know, he's obviously still learning the system, but I mean, the reality is with true freshman quarterbacks, your ceiling is usually fairly limited. I mean, there have been a few guys, you know, Trevor Lawrence, Tua at the end of the year that have been able to get over that hump. But if your goal is to win a national championship, doesn't happen with a true freshman often. Right. Now, he may be that special player that can do it, but, you know, I think for Alabama, what would probably be best is Ty, your upperclassman, takes hold of the job, plays really well, you know, maybe goes to the NFL after the next season, and then Keelan Russell gets his shot, or Austin Mack. You know, that to me, that if you're trying to win a national championship and you want what's best for all the players involved, that might be what fans should be hoping for.
I agree 1,000%. I don't think you can. I think it would be best for the program for Ty Simpson to have a successful year and go straight to the pros, because if he was to come back another year, what would that do for Keelan Russell? If you're Keelan Russell, you're not going to sit around a whole nother year at the same program and back somebody up. You're looking to start and play right away. So
they would Dylan Gabriel him at that point.
They probably would.
Hey.
They probably would.
They'd be like, hey,
look,
we appreciate everything you've done. Yeah. I'm sure there's another team that would take you if you're trying to stay. So just kind of what I feel. I don't think they're going to keep Keelan Russell down for long, for sure.
Right. And Keelan will get some playing time in this year anyway, even if he's the number 2. He'll get some backup. We got Louisiana Monroe, I think, the second game. There's possibility, I mean, depending what happens against Florida State. I don't know how that's going to go first game of the season. Maybe he gets in there, but he'll get on the field throughout the season.
Yeah.
But
I think I'm actually going to keep Lace's comment because it applies to something else later too. Go ahead.
Okay.
Grandma.
Yeah, I was just we were talking about some other things that maybe came out of spring. I've heard a lot of good things about the wide receiver room.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's probably been the talk on the offensive side of the ball, is just how much potential that room has. You know, we all know about Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, but the Miami transfer, Isaiah Horton.
Yes.
I really
my
liked
favorite
him
player now, by the way.
Yeah. When Alabama added him, I felt like he could be a really good player for them. You know, he's got good size. He's explosive. He had the production at Miami to back it up. So I think, you know, that's a great addition because he's a third proven guy to go with Williams and Bernard. So you feel like you got 3 really solid guys coming into the season. And they've got a lot of young talent behind that. You know, the 2 true freshmen, Derek Meadows, Latzia Brooks. There's been a lot of talk about them. You know, they've got some other guys that have been around, Jalen Hale, Cole Adams. So it feels like the talk you hear around the building is that there's a lot of depth at that receiver position, and they feel really good about that position. I think, you know, that's really important in DeBoer's offense. You know, we saw what he did at Washington with those 3 NFL receivers. It just seems to be an offense that, you know, you got to have good dudes at the wide receiver position to really make it go. So I feel like Alabama's got the potential to have that this season.
I got a question. Right. Sorry to interrupt you, Herb. Quick question though, regarding the wide receiver room, what advice would you give to Jalen Mbakwe? Because like we know what he after last season, he basically said he wants to, you know, start to become a wide receiver, get some more touches on that side of the ball. But when you look at the wide receiver room that you just mentioned, and then you look on the other side of the DBs, it seems like both areas are kind of stacked, and he just kind of I don't know if you want to say he falls in the middle, but what advice would you give him, and what do you think you see him doing in the future?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I felt like and I felt this way at the time, that the position change was a spur of the moment decision.
Right.
You know, just I think it was a little bit ill-advised because I thought he had positioned himself well at corner ahead of some of the other younger guys to continue to get playing time. And now he changes positions, and Alabama's continued to build depth at corner. And he hasn't been taking reps there, so it's hard to move him back there. At the same time, the wide receiver position's pretty loaded. So, yeah, I don't know. I think he probably got to stick with wide receiver at this point, or I wouldn't be surprised if we're having the same conversation next offseason that we were, in this past one. I hate to say that, but those are two really stacked positions. So, I think you got to stick with them at receiver at this point, but it's going to be tough. There's a lot of bodies there, and he's a supreme athlete. So I hope maybe he can overcome it. But he played wildcat quarterback in high school at Clay Chalkville, so I'm sure he's still learning the nuances of playing the receiver position, all that comes with that, blocking, route running. So I felt like that was kind of a poor reset when they changed positions with him.
Yeah. No, I agree. And Stephen M. Smith talked on his about it, and the point he made was, okay, if you put him in a wide receiver, who are you taking out? Like that list that you named, it's obvious it's not going to be Bernard or Williams. They've got the top spots locked up. And then, like you mentioned, Horton is almost in, locked for that third spot, but then Brooks has been coming on. Meadows made a lot of under-the-radar plays, I think, at A-Day. I just calling his name a lot more than I realized. I was like, kept looking at Meadows. I was like, okay, and that's what got you, like you said, Rico Scott and Jalen Hale coming back and Cole Adams. I mean, I'm just keep naming and naming and naming. I just don't see where he fits in, man. I agree. I think it was unfortunate.
Maybe special teams or kick returner or something like that.
He was one of the 4 people out there returning punts at A-Day game, which is not really returning. You're basically just catching them. But it was Bernard, Adams, Brooks, and Bach were out there returning punts. So I feel like Bach and Brooks are kind of like we're going to try and take this to the house. And it feels like Bernard and Adams would be kind of more I'm just going to catch this and make sure we have possession of it. Yeah. So that was interesting. But the reason why Horton is my favorite player is not just because of the way he was playing on the field, but in the autograph session when I went up to him, he had just a great attitude, great spirit about him, great presence, very respectful. He looks like a guy who's like, I'm just here to play and make the most of this opportunity. So I really appreciated that from him. All right. So if you had to say, let's say you had no Williams and no Bernard, who do you think would be your top 3 after that if you had to roll out 3?
I think it'd be Horton, Hale, Brooks.
Okay. Nice. And that's Hale coming back 100% because he was out there, but I know there's still a little bit of recovery left to do.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to see in the spring or in the summer, and as we move towards the fall, is can he get his athleticism, speed back? Sometimes it takes guys a year, but I know they really like him a lot. He's got a lot of size to him. That seems to be something they value in a receiver. So,
I think he showed a lot. Get this one real quick from there. Yeah, I hope all 3. Whenever I say that Mac is going, it just seems like, I don't know, it's better to prepare yourself for the worst when it comes to the portal versus hoping for the best. But I hope he does stay. He's been in the system long enough to where he'd have at least a shot at it next year. I'd love to see his growth. You had to invest a lot of time into a guy, and then he goes somewhere else and blossoms.
Yeah, remember Austin Mack is still 18 years old. He was a reclassifier, came out of high school early. So, I mean, he's a guy in a few years, whether he stays or ends up in another school, that I could see, people thinking, I wish we had that guy. Because he's got a lot. He's got huge upside, huge arm, can make all the throws.
Good size, too. Yeah. And
I even told her a little flat. Go ahead,
I'm sorry. I even mentioned to her, but I said Austin Mack may have had the best pass in the 2024 season when he threw that ball to Rico Scott in the Mercer game. I know he didn't have as many reps as everybody else, but that might have been one of the best passes we saw all year.
Yeah. No, the kid's got a lot of potential. There's a reason why they brought him. So I got flack the other night for saying, he didn't look good that day. He's like, it was just a bad game. I'm like, look, again, I'm telling you on this one day, he threw 2 interceptions on the game. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. I can't sugarcoat it. It has nothing to do with his past or his future. One day, he did not look that comfortable. It was interesting for somebody who'd been around as long. But it's like you said, still young, still learning. So I get it. Yep. What else did you want to touch on as far as spring practices and everything?
Yeah, so I'll touch quickly on the offensive line and running back. I think those are two question mark positions, for Alabama heading into the season. Assuming there's not any massive attrition there. I think you got some talent in the running back room, but I don't know that Alabama really has an elite back. I think AK Deer can be that eventually. I
Right.
don't know that he'll be that, as a true freshman. So I think they got to figure out what they're going to do there. You've got Draylon Washington that came in from Louisiana. I think
I
he
like
can be
him.
a solid player. I like him. He's low to the ground, good balance. Richard
Muscle
Young,
hamster, as Rodg likes to say.
Yeah,
Richard Young, he's was a 5-star, talented. I think for him, it's going to be can he do the things outside of running the ball, blocking. I know he had some issues with that last year, and being an effective pass catcher out of the backfield. Because I think that is a lot of DeBoer's offense. It's not going to be quite as run centric. I know Alabama was very run centric last year with Jalen Miller at quarterback, but I don't know it's going to be as run centric as the Saban offense. So you really need versatile backs back there.
Right.
Offensive line, you've got a lot of returning starters. I've still got some big question marks about that offensive line. Even with some returning starters, especially at right guard, Jaden Roberts. I didn't think he was great last year. I think he was struggling with some injuries, but I still question the fit a little bit, just with how much you have to move on this offensive line. You get Parker Brailsford back at center. I think he could be one of the best in the country. You got to figure out that right tackle position. Formby, I think people gave up on him way too early.
yeah.
He's a really young player, so let's see what he can do this year. Proctor, can you get him back healthy and playing well? And then you got to figure out left guard. Is it going to be Cam Dewberry? Is it going to be Gino Vandermark? Is it going to be one of the young guys, Michael Carroll? I think they see Jackson Lloyd more as a tackle. So I got questions about that offensive line, and I think I'll continue to have questions about that offensive line until Alabama, puts another really solid unit on the field. It feels like we've been waiting for a few years to really get back to some of that old offensive line play we used to see at Alabama.
Yeah. And so running back wise, because we did see a little bit more of that, we keep getting asked, hey, do you think you have a 1,000-yard back? And I keep saying no, not just because I feel like the room is deep. As you mentioned, I do think Jam and Richard Young are going to be your 1 and 2. But you look at what Hill, I guess, has been talked about a lot as maybe a third down or a goal line back. Washington, like you said, I saw 2 consecutive runs from him where it was, like you said, low to the ground, come cut outside. Next run, it was good vision. All right, let me just get up the middle and get what I get. I love that. And then AK Deer, like JB always says, he runs like a deer. You just see 5 guys that I feel like are going to get a lot of touches and that they can use in different ways. So that's why I felt like Alabama's not going to have a 1,000-yard rusher, but we will have a competent running game. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the offensive line. I don't know that Alabama has a back that you can count on to, I guess, do more with less. So I think you're really going to be hoping that offensive line can open up
for you.
some, more holes this year. It's a very different blocking scheme than under Saban. There's a lot more movement, a lot more pulling guards and such. They even pull the center sometimes. So I think, you're hoping some guys shed weight in the offseason. I'll say this about the running back position. I watch for Washington, in my opinion. I went back and watched some film of DeBoer, his teams at Fresno State and Washington. To me, he fits the kind of back that DeBoer has played with in the past, as far as vision.
They went after him for a reason,
style.
right? Yeah.
Right. So I know, Jam Miller, I think, will be your starter. I still think it's a battle for that number 2 position between Richard Young and Draylon Washington. So I'll be interested to see how that shakes out going into the fall.
Say what's up real quick, C-Bama. How are you doing? And Big Mike.
Shout out to Big Mike.
Yep, we're going to be joining tomorrow on his WrestleMania for Dummies show.
Yeah.
Raj and I will be playing the Dummies.
We'll be the Dummies,
But him and Spad will be telling us everything. And I forgot to say this when E was on here. I don't know how many NBA fans are. I know it's kind of out of the wheelhouse, but E will be joining us Friday night, 8 p.m. Central Time, for a little NBA playoff preview. We'll know almost all the seeds except the 8 seeds by the time we get on air. But we're going to be checking out and breaking down the whole thing. So looking forward to that too as well. And what's up, Charmaine? How are you doing
Shout out
tonight?
to Charmaine. Appreciate you joining us. One other thing about the running back position that Bama
This better be
discovered-
good though. Like this better be the best
Probably.
comment you've ever made. No pressure.
Oh, well, it's not going to be the best comment I ever made. That always comes on Saturday night. That's Saturday night.
Okay.
The good thing about our running back core this room is that we're deep. We've got. It seems like we've got a nice group of running backs. So we got a mixture of like speed and some power in there. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Sorry, I just want to add that on right quick.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about Proctor on the offensive line? Do you think he moves positions ultimately, or do you think he stays at left tackle?
I think they'll stick with him at left tackle. He's one of those guys that definitely needs to drop some more weight. That's been a constant battle since he got here. So I don't see a change happening there. I think just want to see him elevate his play from a year ago. Not that he was bad last year, but
yeah.
Needs to be better.
About what size would you get his target at, I guess, in order to be at a optimal level to play that position?
Yeah, it depends on what he actually was at last year.
I don't know. I feel like it fluctuated last year. It started at something, then it just went down 10 pounds. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I feel like he's probably 350, 360.
Okay.
Or at least that's probably what he played at last year. I think he needs to be like 330, 325.
Yeah.
I think would be a good weight for him. I mean, he's a big dude, so he carries it well. But yeah, to play in this offense, I think he needs to be somewhere around there.
Yes, Randy. What's up?
Evening, Randy. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Randy, we breaking down the G-Day game, I believe, tomorrow. Although he did already have some videos, and I think he did an after show / after party, because it's always a party with Randy on Saturday. But I believe he'll probably go more into that. So, and I did text him happy birthday, Rodg. Did you?
I did not. Randy, I deeply apologize.
Oh,
I did not know Herb was going to call me out on live TV.
Randy has picked Rodg 2-0 against me on this show, but I just want everybody to remember who was actually there for Randy on his birthday. So, the last offensive position we haven't covered then, and I thought at one point we had like 6 on the roster, and I think we only have 1 that was semi-healthy at this point. Is tight. Do they all just do bar fights together or something? Like, what is going on with our tight end room?
Tight ends are weird dudes, so who knows what they're doing outside the facility. But yeah, I think Alabama's got some good players there. They're just all injured right now. Fortunately and hopefully, it doesn't look like any of them are serious. So, I thought Cuevas did some good things last year. I like what he can do.
Yeah.
I feel like he's pretty versatile, as far as blocking and being able to catch the ball. Danny Lewis is a guy who, originally entered the transfer portal, decided to come back. So I expect he's going to have a role. You've got some, freshmen there, Marshall Pritchett, who was there this spring. I heard some good things about him early. And then you've got the tight end out of Texas. I'm forgetting his name right now. I think it's Caleb something, but he's super talented. I like him a lot. He's super athletic, more of a receiving tight end. So I'm excited about what they've got in that tight end room. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to add a guy in the portal, though.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. I don't know that you can go out and really get a huge difference maker, but just to get another body in there in case you run into the same issues during the season would be good to have some more depth.
Mm-hmm. So offense-wise, because we'll put a cap on that, so just limited offensive players, is there any name that sticks out as you think will enter the portal? And outside of tight end, do you think there's a spot that we will add in the portal?
Yeah, I haven't really heard about anybody specifically entering the portal. I mean, if you're Alabama's coaching staff, I think you're hoping that anybody that does enter is probably depth pieces. If you don't want to have a situation like Tennessee's dealing with and like Cal's dealing with.
We're going to talk about that.
Yes, I was waiting for us to get into that.
Well, yeah, all the talks around Nico, but Jaden Ott entered the portal from Cal, and he's their star running back. So I think you're hoping that you don't have anybody like that that's a surprise and is poised to be a big piece of the roster. I think on the offense, potential portal additions like we're talking about tight end, but I think offensive line, maybe we could see another utility player added there, similar to the way they added Geno Vandermark in the spring portal last year, just to get you another body there. But I don't expect much more than that, but we'll see. I think Alabama does have some space numbers wise, so maybe they added a position or two elsewhere, but on the offensive side of the ball. But I don't see a mass influx of players coming in.
Raj, did you have a comment on the offense, or we're going to move on into
one quick question for you, Bama Beat, on the offense? I know Herb mentioned the fact of us possibly having an 1,000-yard back this year. Do you think we'll have an 1,000-yard receiver this year? And if so, who would it be?
Yeah, I actually do think we'll have a 1,000-yard receiver this year. And I think it'll probably be Ryan Williams. Horton wouldn't shock me.
He's
I think
climbing
he's
my
got.
list.
I think he's got that kind of potential.
And having played with Ty Simpson in the past, I guess too, there's a little connection too as well. Yeah.
I'm hoping this is going to be a really productive passing offense. That's what Grubb has typically done in the past. Obviously it's DeBoer's offense, but Grubb has a certain way he wants to run it. And I think he's been more pass heavy at most of his stops. So I would say yes, they do have a 1,000-yard receiver. And like I said, I'd bet on Williams just because it feels like second year, man. He's going to make a jump. But Horton wouldn't surprise me.
I think Herb and I picked the Germinator.
Do you think she means he's got legs like we mean he's got legs? Or like
I think Lady A is crushing on Isaiah Horton right now.
Okay.
That's
fine. I love Horton, so that's good.
My pick was Germinator.
I like Germinator. I like Germinator. I think he was steadier down the stretch. Yep. Ryan Williams definitely has the home run potential, so you could see it like Germ had 5 catches for 60 yards, and Ryan Williams had 2 for 140 and 2 touchdowns. Like you could just see those kind of things. But I definitely think Horton is in the mix. So.
Yeah.
The way we've seen him in the press conferences and at practices, yes, Grubbs is locked in. I think he's got something to prove for sure. So
he's trying to build that resume up.
So are you saying yes or no? I mean,
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means. All right, so we'll put a cap on the offensive side. We'll kind of get, I guess, a little quicker through any defensive nuggets or concerns when you're coming through there?
No, I mean, I think that's the better side of the ball, as we head into summer.
Agree.
A lot of experience, talent returning. I think, Kane Womack did some good things with that defense last year. Certainly some areas they need to get better at. I think run blocking was a big issue in several of Alabama's losses. Just maintaining the edge, which is, that's one of the weaknesses we talked about when Alabama changed to this defense was, it was a scheme limitation potentially. So I think defensive line is probably the key position. I feel like Alabama's going to be okay at linebacker. They're super deep in the secondary after being, pretty thin this time last year. So they've got a lot of good inside backers. I think outside they've got to kind of, find a way to replace, Q Robinson. I think Russol's a good player, but he's different. He's not really a super, twitchy guy from that outside edge spot. So I think defensive line is really the position I'm going to be watching as far as like how good can Alabama be defensively? What is their ceiling? I think they've got to get better at that position. You've got some good players there. Getting Tim Keenan back was big. LT Overton is, poised for a big year. I think James Smith is probably the most talented of those three. I think it's behind them. Who are the guys that step up behind them? There's Edric Hill, Jordan Renaud, some of those younger defensive linemen that have been around, for a year or two now. Can they make that jump and provide some quality depth? Because, that's the position to me that makes a defense go. When you can rotate those defensive linemen and you've got depth there, especially with some of the struggles that Alabama had in the run game last year, that's just going to be a key position because I think they're good in the back end. I think they're going to be solid at linebacker. So they got to find a little, a way to rush the passer a little bit better and be a little bit more disciplined up front.
Yeah, I agree. I like the assessment on defense. You could tell, and obviously it just feels that way always in spring game, but even this last practice, the defense was still ahead of the offense. And the fact that it was just kind of like a mini rush, really helped the offense just so we can get some plays. But the secondary, even missing starters, no Jackson, no Sab out there, they still would come. I mean, I like the pieces, and I like the fact that a lot of freshmen are getting a chance out there because you can tell they're coming in hungry. and looking for a chance to start. So
Yeah, and I think a key on that side of the ball is, it's going to be year 2 in this new scheme. I think guys are going to feel a little bit more comfortable. I think we started to see that, as the year ended last year. So I expect they're going to be playing fast. And I think it's just some of that situational defense is where I want to see Alabama get better. Statistically last year, that was one of Bama's better defenses since 2017. And a lot of people would probably be surprised to hear that. I think it's just that situational defense. Ran up against some offenses that just kind of grinded Alabama out. And I think they've got to get better at defending that kind of scheme.
Where do you see Dijon Lee fitting into all this? Do you see him getting a significant amount of playing time, or is it might maybe take a year or so?
Yeah, that's tough because I think with Jackson out, this spring, he kind of stepped into that role.
Yeah.
So I want to say that he's going to have a big role in the fall. But when Jackson comes back, you're talking about Damani Jackson at one corner, Xavier Brown at the other. You've got Cameron Calhoun, the Utah transfer.
Yep.
He's thought of highly by a lot of folks. So I think Dijon Lee will play a role. I don't know that'll be as large as we saw this spring, but man, he's got great potential. You talk about length at corner,
size,
and super athletic. I mean, I'm excited to see him, and I really think Maurice Lindquist has done a fantastic job with that secondary. I mean, I can't believe the turnaround we've seen in a year. We were talking last year. I think we were having one of these shows about what's Alabama going to do in the secondary. Can Damani be that number one guy? Who's the guys behind them? And now you look at that room and you're like, how do we keep all these guys? So
exactly.
He's super underrated hire in my opinion. I don't think he's gotten enough credit.
Yeah, I think it was one of those early on in the year. It seemed like we were getting beat a lot, but the quarterbacks couldn't make us pay. And all of a sudden, end of the year, like, oh yeah, they're just not getting beat. It's kind of the rest of the stuff that's falling apart, but it didn't seem to be the secondary. Lady Alpha, we would love if this is true. Yes, I think the only thing that possibly stops him is the ball getting spread around.
Yep.
But I think it's clear he's Alabama's for sure most dynamic receiver. Like I said, I definitely think Bernard and Horton factor in the mix, and wouldn't overlook Brooks, and I could keep going on and on. So if you had to give an overall state of the roster, we'll just break it into the both halves, where you felt like talent-wise or group-wise we were at. Where do you feel like the offense, the defense, and then the kicking game, where do you feel like we're at right now coming out of spring?
Yeah, so I'll say on the offense, I'm probably at like a B-. And that may be a little bit of a cynical view, but just without seeing too much. And with, the offensive line, the run game kind of being a question mark, and then you've got a new quarterback, I'll stay there at like a B-, which to me, I view that as like just a little less than average, as far as personnel goes. Potential to be really good. I just, without seeing it, I don't want to, go too overboard with it. Defense, I'm going to say A-. I think Alabama's really poised to be a really good defensive team this fall. Like I said, got to get past some of the scheme limitations, but the talent's there. If there's a time for Alabama to be really good on defense early in Kalen DeBoer's tenure, I think this is the year. You got a lot of key guys back. You're in your second year in the system. So feel really good about that side of the ball. Kicking game, I think, is a question mark at this point.
Incomplete.
I'd probably have it at like a C+. And that sounds bad, but remember, C's get degrees. It's right in the middle.
Wait. Time out.
Herb, C's get degrees, baby.
Herb, have you ever heard anybody say that? That's the first time.
But that's going in the book.
I love that one.
So yeah, I don't want people to think it sounds bad, but I think they have the potential to be good there. I think Talty was solid in spring. I heard about a couple misses, but I heard he hit some long ones as well. So I think they feel okay there. Nicholson ended up being a really underrated kicker for Alabama last year. I think the lack of kicks for him, he kind of went under the radar. He missed a few early, but he was really solid down the stretch. So it's tough to replace him. I think punter's the big question mark there with the specialist because Alex Asparoff is the expected starter at this point. I think that's another position Alabama might look into the portal. Just because Asparoff was off all spring with an injury, he was out. So I don't think what you have there, not having had him in any practices. So maybe they go get a veteran guy. I didn't mention this, but I think, defensive line, linebacker, those are a few spots that Alabama could look to the portal on the defensive side of the ball. I think, defensive line, you'd love to get a stud, that you can rely on. I don't know that you're going to get that in the spring portal. Linebacker, maybe another utility player just to give you some depth there. But, returning wise, as far as punt returns, kick returns, I think there's plenty of options on the roster. Cole Adams, hopefully he's healthy again. I loved watching him catch punts last year. He was really comfortable with it. And Bakwe is probably the more explosive player. Maybe they throw him a bone there, try to keep him on the roster.
That's what I was kind of thinking with him too. Yeah.
Right. And I'd like to see Alabama, be a lot better in the return game next year. I feel like that was really just a weak aspect of Alabama's team last year. Just seemed like any good return had a penalty. They just got to be a little bit more disciplined on special teams and, make that a weapon for your team, not a liability.
Yep. Yeah, I think I see Bach getting a lot more play on the special teams, unless for some sort of fortuitous reason something happens with the wide receiver core. So,
no, I agree. Oh, by the way, I know C's get degrees, but if you need like a heart transplant and you go in there and your doctor got a C and graduated, you're probably still looking for.
So you mean you're gonna be laying on the table like, hold on, wait, what?
I need to see the degree. What was your final grades? Yeah. But I think Seinfeld had a joke about it. He said, not every doctor graduated from the top of their class, right? Like you can't think that every guy was, A+ at Yale. Like that's not happening in real life. So.
And this is special teams, not surgery.
Should be all right. Trying to, which one do you think is more difficult and has more high pressure situation?
Oh, it's hard to call a fair catch, man.
I'd rather do that than be carving on somebody.
But when you have surgery, there's only the family and maybe whoever watching. When you catch a punt and miss it, it's like 100,000 fans.
That is a very valid point, man.
I'm just saying. And I hope
you mess up a surgery. Nobody's
seriously.
going on social media. Nobody's going to attack you on Twitter if you mess up a surgery.
Yeah, or if you just kill a guy, Rodg, you think you're just okay. Nobody.
Next subject.
Next subject. So I did want to give everybody a chance to weigh in on the Nico situation, and I don't know if you both saw Randy's question. We'll hold that for a second, but SEC top 5 after spring. Give you all a chance to think about who you want your team to be. So there was a heated debate on the opening kick last night. About the whole Nico situation. So there were some other things that kind of opened my eyes about it. But for anybody who hadn't heard, obviously Tennessee's starting quarterback last year, starting quarterback going into next year, apparently wanted more money is the short version of it. And Tennessee said no, and he's no longer on the team. So Bama Beat, what were your initial thoughts about this whole situation? Oh, there goes Smoke. Smoke will love this one.
Shout out to Smoke Dixon. We appreciate you, man.
Yep. Smoke was actually kind of defending Nico last night, or at least Nico's part in the situation. So,
yeah, everything I've heard behind the scenes is it's more Nico's father than Nico. What I was told is that Nico would have preferred to stay at Tennessee, stick around. But there's some folks, his father and others, in his camp that, were kind of pushing for another deal from Tennessee. And I'll just say this. I think Tennessee's handled the situation well. You certainly don't want a player holding your roster hostage. And, I think given Nico's performance last season, he was a good quarterback. I don't think he was excellent or fantastic or anything. So the numbers he's commanding to me don't add up. But I will say this about Tennessee's role in this. When you give a guy that much money up front to come to your school, I think you're setting a bad expectation, precedent. It just, to me, that kind of starts the relationship off on a rocky footing. They paid a lot of money to get him to come there out of high school. So I think you're kind of reaping the downside of that now. So I hate it for the kid just because, from everything I've heard, I don't think he's the one pushing it. But, it is what it is. That's part of college football now. I hate to say it, but we'll probably continue to see this with more players. We started off with, I remember when Christian McCaffrey sat out the bowl game
Yes.
to get ready for the draft.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've gotten to this point. And I know we didn't have NIL back then, but it's all kind of the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're now at this point where players are, sitting out practice to ask for more money. So, I'm hopeful that in the next few years we get some kind of NIL legislation. I think that's the only thing that's going to fix this. But, at the same time, I don't put too much stock in what Washington can do and everything. But I think that's at this point the only thing that's going to solve the situation, because there's just too many litigation risks for anybody that doesn't have legal power to make any decisions.
Yeah. I agree. Roger, do you want to weigh in before I?
Yeah, I think once the NIL thing kind of started to take place, I think it was only a matter of time before this type of situation happened. Again, to Bama Beat's point, I think this is just the beginning of it. I guarantee you, once this hits social media, there are other not just quarterback, other players around the country thinking along the same lines, already considering going to other schools, sitting out, etc., wanting more money. I don't think he's worth the money. He, again, not a bad quarterback, but I mean, if you take a look at the Alabama game, they probably could have been up 17-3 at halftime had he hit a couple of those passes. That was just one of his things throughout the year. He overthrew a lot of people, underthrew some guys. They got mollywopped by Ohio State in the playoff game. I would like to see him just come back another year, have a good season at Tennessee, and then maybe go on from there and see what happens. Yeah, and it does sound like a situation where he has some people in his ear telling him, hey, this guy at this school over here is getting paid just as much as you do, and he's nowhere near your level. So why don't you do the same thing? So I just don't think it's good for him. I don't think it's good for his future. I think, as he starts looking for somewhere else to play, they're going to take that into consideration. There is going to be eventually some school that gives him what he wants, and he'll go there and play. So. I don't know where that's going to be at. We've already heard school was it North Carolina? I think Tulane was out, and all these other schools just said where they don't want to have anything to do with that.
USC and UCLA seem to be.
He's from the
mock draft did spots, but not. I haven't heard anything official.
Well, he's a West Coast kid, so I could see him definitely going back to somewhere like UCLA and getting some playing time there. But I mean, he was coming from the SEC, toughest conference in the land, and getting significant amount of playing time. He was going to be the starting quarterback next year. Just come back again, shine, have a good season, and then see what happens in the next offseason. But again, it's just going to set a bad precedent, and we're going to see a lot more of this.
Yep. No, I agree. My biggest problem with how – go ahead, Ben.
Yes, sorry to interrupt her, but I was going to say, this is very public, and I think it's caught people by surprise. This has been happening behind the scenes, just for those that don't know. I mean, there were several players on playoff teams this year that threatened to sit out if they, their deal wasn't renegotiated or more money wasn't added. And I'll tell you this, it's happened at Alabama. It happened 2 years ago when Alabama played, I guess maybe it was a year and a half ago, when Alabama played Michigan in the Rose Bowl. You had a few players before that game that threatened to sit out, and one or two of them are still on the roster. So, the folks that are having fun, laughing at Tennessee, just know it could be your team next. This is stuff that's happening behind the scenes. It is not unique.
Yep. And I'll give you one of Smoke's points from last night and why this stuff is this way. He's like, Tennessee didn't have a general manager. Part of your whole deal and why Courtney Morgan is getting what he's getting is that this doesn't have to touch the public or touch the coach. So when I say Tennessee's part in it hasn't been perfect, if you had issues all spring, if you had this going on in the bowl game, you can't let it get to the last practice of spring and your starting quarterback is walking out the window. So we're like, hey, Tennessee, you did the right thing. I'm like, why weren't y'all doing something sooner? If we found out today Ty Simpson was unhappy and he was out tomorrow, we'd be in Courtney Morgan's office going, hey, man, what's the deal? What's going on? Yep. Second, on Nico's part, you should never have a family member have your dad negotiating on your behalf. Because let me tell you, from stuff I've read, those negotiations can get downright dirty. The team is going to try to downplay you and talk bad about you to keep the number down. It doesn't mean that's how they feel. That's the only way they can keep the number down. Well, your completion percentage on third downs was abysmal last year. Yep. And if it's your agent, they shield you from that. if it's your dad, like Rodg, imagine our dad in a negotiation with us, and they're talking about the Herb and Rodg podcast. I don't really think those guys are funny. Our dad is flipping the table, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, hey, we're out of here. We're not doing Alabama anymore. So I think it was a failure on both sides to even let it get to this point.
Yeah.
And then this kind of goes to a separate one, but yes, all these guys watching each other and do that. That's how the NFL has gotten the way it's gotten. With everybody's salary, the last guy to get paid gets the most because they're just waiting for the next guy before them. So.
And with a lot of players pocket watching, you're going to see. We've already seen it happen, but you're going to see a lot of guys eventually finish college at whatever age they want to finish college at, try to go to the NFL, and they're not going to come. They're not really going to be. They're not going to reach their full potential because they never allowed themselves to get developed at the collegiate area. They kept moving from school to school, transferring, trying to go somewhere where they're going to get the most amount of playing time, and you're never going to see them maximize their potential. Yep. It's unfortunate, but it's going to happen.
Well, I think that's part of why the market for Nico so far is looking a little shaky. Because, I mean, the reality is whatever team brings him in, you're all of a sudden going to have to renegotiate with a large portion of your roster. Right. If you pay somebody like Nico big money to come in, you don't think the other guys on that roster aren't going to be saying, well, if he's getting that, why am I getting this?
And that goes back to his pocket watching thing. So,
right.
It's a
I wonder how much Dylan Sampson was getting that last year.
Probably not enough for what he was doing.
Yeah.
Yep. And this is my problem with it too, Carol. Actually, with all the stuff getting to the media and exposing it, I made the comparison last night when Luka got traded. All of a sudden, he was the worst player ever. He was 270 all these pounds. Things they hated. He was overweight, and I'm like, you didn't hear about any of these things until the situation was gone, and now all of a sudden, so it didn't make it to the media. Tennessee 1,000% leaked all the details going on when they knew that he would be out the door.
So, information like that gets out because somebody wants that information.
And I think this is going to be a lot of stuff. So there's going to be, like I said, a lot more kids like that. So and your dad just shouldn't be involved in stuff like that. It's way too personal. Way too personal. And like I said, he's trying to get a little bit more from it. No. And then you're one of the few to say that, man. I'm glad that you said that about Nico, that this is not, what he wanted. It just sounds like a situation that other people were pushing and maybe kind of spiraled out of control. So,
when you're negotiating deals like that, you need someone that has your best interest at heart, but that can be objective.
Yes.
Right. It's difficult for a family member to be objective.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I don't like Rodg most days, but if I was negotiating for him, it would still be personal. I was still trying to.
I appreciate that.
Oh, I didn't know if you were still listening. Sorry, Rodg. My bad.
I'm on the phone. Okay.
Yeah, we say that, but in this case, it's all coming specifically from one side. And to me, it's not like necessarily journalism, it's being leaked instead. So that's just my personal feeling on it. So if they were exposing why weren't they exposing this earlier on? Why didn't we hear a lot of this stuff before? We didn't hear about it until, he was out the door, and then we hear all this stuff. So that's my only problem. So, and Carol, that is 1,000%. I think it happens. And like I said, Nico might be the poster child for it right now, but it happens everywhere.
Like I said, if he ends up at like UCLA, cool, he might get paid, but then who are they playing? Who's going to be on UCLA's team to help them succeed next year? Who are they playing? Himself. Are they going? What now?
He's hurting himself.
That's what I'm saying. You might not be playing against some of the best competition, and then over time you start to see him
with great talent on your team too.
Yeah.
So your roster is going to take a hit wherever you head for now. So
2
years from now, you're going to look back on this situation and just not like it at all. So.
Yeah.
All right. Did want to give you a quick second. I know we're kind of at the top of the hour, so we'll make this one a little more brief, I guess, than I originally intended. So Trae Young just got tossed, looks like, in the NBA game that's on. So, yeah. The problem for both sides now is if UT goes 4-9 or Nico goes somewhere, everybody in Tennessee's got to watch him. Or you're going to be rooting for somebody, a sophomore, just because it's just good. So
as long as they lose to us, one of those 9s is us. I'm good.
So, I hope so. Paul will be right on asking the right questions. Looking, like I said, I think the information is coming from one side because it's all about one side, and nobody's talked about Tennessee's spot in it. Real quick, what do you think with Phylon going to the draft, and then the overall question? How do you think it's going to affect the roster, and what do you see from the roster with the changes we've made so far?
Yeah, that was a bummer. Yeah, I've heard some differing things behind the scenes as far as is he gonna, you know, go all in on the NBA, or is he still, leaving the door open to return to college? Some pretty well-connected folks down there saying he's leaving that option open to return to Alabama, even though that's not what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Right. And can I say this? Every post says he's not leaving the option open.
Based on that social media post, it sounded like he was all in and going to the draft. So.
Yeah, and that's what you see everywhere. So, God, I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw that part.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. So I think we'll see what happens, because everything publicly is saying he's definitely gone. I mean, I think it hurts, for sure. I think that was to me, he was kind of the linchpin as far as looking towards next year, just to get that experienced point guard back. I think it's going to be tough to find a good point guard out of the portal. Not that Nate Oates can't do it, but they don't grow on trees and they're usually expensive. So I think that's a tough guy to replace. As far
he's
as
a hell
some
of
of
a
the
defender
losses,
too.
Yeah,
right. He's got so much potential defensively, and I think he really grew into that point guard role. As the season went along, he's got a good handle. He can distribute the ball. He can score. So I mean, he has everything you want. I think that's probably why there is a push, to go ahead and try the NBA. I think there's probably going to be some scouts that really like him. As far as some of the other guys that left, I think it hurt to not get one of Stevenson or Reed back. I thought that was disappointing. I was really hoping, at least we get at least one of them back.
Yeah.
I know Stevenson's not a fan favorite, but he's a 18-year-old still, 19-year-old.
6'11",
and he's 6'11". He's got a good stroke.
I know you were frustrated with him at times, though, huh?
I was. I mean, you could scroll through my Twitter and probably, observe that. But I still think he has a lot of potential. And, we all know Reed was a 5-star. I think offensively he still, had a ways to go, on the perimeter, but, was a talented driver and everything. So I think that hurt. And, Diabate was a surprise to everybody. I think that NIL just got out of Alabama's price range. Honestly, I think they had a hard time, matching the minutes to the number. Because I mean, the reality is Diabate had one of the highest foul rates in the conference, so it's hard to keep him on the floor. And when you're asking for big NIL, those numbers need to, make sense together. So I think at the wing position, it's going to be interesting to see what Alabama does. Do they bring back Rylan Griffin? A bigger guard. He can kind of play the 3, maybe the 4 against a small lineup. There's a few other guys they're looking at in the portal. There's a guy from Washington State who's a really talented player. He's also looking at the NBA. So I think people just need to chill out. Let's see how the next 3-4 weeks go. At this time last year, Alabama didn't have Philon. They didn't have Cliff Amori. So, let's trust Oates, Preston Murphy to put this roster together. But
we didn't agree to being patient, rational fans. Like,
I'll tell you this, man. I've been a football guy all my life. Alabama basketball has always been, fairly average for most of the time I've been watching. But, man, it's getting to the point where basketball, it's up there for me, man. I enjoy it a lot, and I hate to see this season end. So I've been tracking the roster just like everybody else. I think it's easy to get in a frenzy and, be worried about, we're not going to fill this position, that position. There's still plenty of time. There's still a lot of good players out there. The good thing about some of these departures is probably freed up some NIL budget for Alabama. So they've got a chance to go get some really good players. And Oates has, shown in the past that he can do that. Even if they're not big names, when Aaron Estrada came out of Hofstra, he was a good player. I think, people were excited about him, but I think he ended up being a lot better than people thought. So, I trust the staff to find little gems like that. I think they've, added, a few good pieces already. I like Bowen from Florida State. I think he's got a lot of potential. So we'll just have to see how it shakes out.
Yes, I agree, Kat. Yeah, I don't remember any of this that we signed up for. Oh, Kat had one too on the position. I had to give her some love, even though it was a Saints comment. At least he didn't wait till he got paid and then faked the shoulder injury. Somebody's a little upset about the Derek Carr.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, we're gonna end with that. Or I'm sorry, Raj, did you have a comment on Nate Oates and the basketball
No,
team?
no. I mean, as long as we have Nate Oates, I think we'll be fine. One thing is for certain: next year our starting five is going to look completely different than it did this year. I know we have Holloway returning. I don't know if he's going to be the starting point guard or not. I like his 3-point shooting. His size is a little bit of a concern for me. I know he's listed like online like 6'1", but he does not look like he's 6'1".
No, he doesn't.
Not at all. And we got a couple of 4-star recruits coming in as well. So we'll to Bama Beat's point, let's just settle down, give it some time. Let's see if we work some magic in the portal, get some more guys in here. I think the team will be fine next year.
I agree. Yep. All right, we'll kick off the question segment with Randy's SEC top 5 after the spring.
Okay.
You go first, Rodg.
I got to go. All right, I'm going to be biased. I'm going to start with Bama. I'm going to go with – I'm going to put Bama, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas, and then I'll do LSU. I really, really like South Carolina's team. Defensively, they're going to look good. Sellers is going to be back. We have to play in Columbia. That's going to be a tough road game for us this year. Georgia's going to look good defensively. I still have a question mark about their offense. I'm not sure how well how sharp they're going to be on that end. Obviously, the big question mark with Texas is Arch Manning. He's got the last name. We've seen him play in a few games. They got a tough game. They play at Ohio State, I think, to start their season off. So that's going to be huge for him. My fifth was LSU. Is this the year where Garrett Nussmeier just has that super duper year and then comes out and leads the team to some wins this year? So I'll roll with them. I could still unsure about Ole Miss. I didn't put Ole Miss in the top 5. I forgot their starting quarterback's name. I forgot the gentleman's name. Sorry about that. But I'm not sure where they fall in the top 10 at all. Somewhere in that range right now. So I'll go with those top 5 for right now.
Yeah, I think I'd have the same 5, maybe slightly different order. So I got number 1, Texas. I like some of the pieces they got coming back. I think Arch Manning will be solid for them. UGA, number 2. I think as long as Kirby's there, they're going to be, they're near the top of the ACC. I'm not sold on Gunnar Stockton yet, but I think they'll be good along the line of scrimmage as always. Bama, 3, South Carolina, 4, and then 5th, I would have had UT in here prior to Nico leaving, but I'm going to have LSU there now. Just too much question at the quarterback position for the Vols.
Yeah, I like that order, and I think Texas still kind of on their easy schedule too, so I think that'll benefit them coming through the conference. And obviously, there's still some wild cards in the portal, but I like that top 5. I think I would go with that as well. So
Texas has to play at Ohio State and at Georgia, right?
Right, but we're not for the purpose of this specific question.
This is just post-spring.
Yeah. No, which by the way, they're going to lose both those games, but that's a whole another question. We'll cover that more in our play-by-play. It's interesting though, the CBS article that we covered 3 weeks ago, Raj, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where they had the game-by-game breakdown, had Georgia going 11-1 and losing only to Tennessee. So that writer's got to go and scrap his whole article and tell me what the changes are. So, and had Alabama losing to Georgia and Auburn of all teams. So, Cat, he was good. He was good. He would have liked this year's team that could penetrate a lot and only shot a lot. He would have been perfect guy to put in and hit a mid-range jumper, because I think that would have, not that we're going to beat a team like Duke, but teams like that weren't letting us get to the rim and were pushing it off the 3-point line, I felt like he would have been better with. But that's neither here nor there. Rod, are you asking the first question or the second question?
I'll do the first question. I hate to bring this up, but our basketball season ended with a very, very close game to Duke. So my question,
it was close at tip-off. It was close at tip-off.
My question for you, Bama Beat, is if you had to go back and take 2 former Alabama basketball players and put them on this year's team to face off with Duke, which 2 former players would you take, and which 2 former players would you take? Which former 2 would you get to replace 2 from this year's team, basically? I think I know one.
One is Brandon Miller for sure.
Yes.
I mean, would have loved to have Brandon Miller this year. Give you some size on the perimeter. Obviously he was a lottery pick, super skilled. Jeez. That's tough. That's a good question, Raj. I mean, Brandon Miller comes to mind easy, but after that,
Yeah.
it's like, do you go with? I mean, I have a recency bias, just being not a long-time Alabama basketball fan. I mean, do you go with Colin Sexton? I mean, he gives you, a little bit of driving ability,
And
But
a
not as
decent
much
not
size.
not
Yeah.
super big, which I think Alabama, that's probably what they were missing the most at the point guard position
Yep.
Yeah, I
this
agree.
year. Raj, did you have another one that was obvious?
No, Brandon
give you
Miller
a
was
quick
was
fire.
obvious. Herb Jones was up there because I know Herb Jones could give us some few points, but obviously his defense was the big thing there. So,
Yeah.
and I'm
I
just thinking
think
about those
when-
guys being on the team playing against Duke and how those matches would align.
Yeah. When he gave me the question, I think you muted yourself, Bama. When he gave me this question, Brandon Miller was the easiest, quickest, and then it was just like, are we coming in? Yeah, because I kind of swayed by the Herb. I said I like the size. We wouldn't get as much shooting, but we would have a good versatile. And he has improved his 3-point shot since he got in the NBA. So do I get that version of him that's not going to hit 20, but hit 2 a game for me? That'd be good. Otherwise, I was like, who's the biggest players that we've had in recent? All I want anybody tall.
I'll tell you one that I think, if you're talking about some of the recent teams that may have made sense, Charles Bediako, I think, could have helped this team a lot. When you said Herb, I'm like, oh, how did I not think of Herb? That makes a lot of sense. One concern I would say,
name.
one concern I would have with Herb is like, obviously he's a lot better player than Diabate. But I don't think they're too dissimilar. Obviously Herb spent a lot more time on the floor, a lot more talented offensively. So that would be my one concern with Herb is, that he limits you a little bit offensively. I do think somebody like Bediako would have been super advantageous to have down low, just because I don't think Cliff Amore ended up being, that rim protector that, we all wanted him to be. Had some offensive skill, but defensively, I didn't think the drop coverage really, played well to his game. So I think I'll go with Miller and Bediako. And you said, do we got to remove somebody off this team?
Yeah, so if you go with Miller and Bediako, who are you replacing them with?
I'd have been like Ragsdale.
Right. So no, it has to be. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, it has to be starters.
Okay. Yeah, if I was taking somebody off this team, it would probably be Reed or Stevenson for me on Brandon Miller. Reed, super talented, but obviously he was banged up a lot of the year. We didn't get to see much of him. Stevenson, like I said, I think he has a lot of potential, but still a young player. Not quite aggressive enough for me. And then, maybe Bediako. I guess you could swap him out for Cliff. I
Cliff,
hate that for Cliff because I think Cliff did some good things this year. I just think Alabama needed more defensive presence down low than they needed him on the offensive end. So that's probably what I'd go with.
Stevenson, All right. Rodg had this one, so I think you'll like this one. All right. Work, play, live, ditch. All right. You've got a Tennessee fan, an Auburn fan, a Georgia fan, and an LSU fan.
Okay. Work, play.
Can you tell we have a little bit too much time on our
So what are they? Work, play, ditch, and what's the other one?
Work, play, live, ditch. Yep.
Live.
Yeah.
I've gotten enough of these questions now. You think I'd remember it, but so I'm gonna work with Auburn fans because I already do that every day, and I know I can live with it.
You can tolerate them.
Yeah, I can tolerate it. I'm gonna play with the LSU fans. They're always a good time.
Yes,
I've enjoyed it every time I go down to Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is really too bad.
Who are you ditching? That's the big question.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna ditch the Georgia fans.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've always said that Georgia fans is, and sorry to Randy and some of our other Georgia listeners, they're like one of the worst fan bases I've dealt with, to be honest. And UT is too, but Georgia to me is a little worse. So I'm going to say ditch Georgia and live with the Tennessee fans.
Oh my gosh. That's got to be brutal.
I might switch those. I think
I
I'm gonna live with the
Georgia fan. Yeah, you got to ditch the Tennessee fan.
Yeah,
I was maybe gonna go with the work with the Tennessee fan, live with the Auburn fan.
Whoa, it's getting worse.
I think that's what I pick. I think I picked live with the Auburn fan.
The only thing everybody really wants to do is go out with the LSU fan. Everything else.
Yeah, that was easy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one though. That's 4 really bad choices.
Yeah.
Carol, we still love you. And Carol also picked Ragsdale. I don't know why I'm the one apologizing. I'm 0-3 with Georgia fans. I just realized that. Georgia doesn't love me.
Hey man.
We didn't put them on the list, but that would be a good inclusion. So for sure. He said you wound me. I'm sure Randy's. Well, Randy, I love you, even though you don't love me back. It's fine. All right, Bama Beat. Another good episode as usual, man. Tell everybody what you got going on. Where we can find you. What's coming up next.
Yeah, if you want to follow me at the Bama Beat on Twitter, talking Alabama sports. Not a whole lot going on right now, but we'll be tweeting about basketball portal season, and baseball has kicked up. Alabama's got a pretty good squad this season, so Rob Vaughn I think is an up and coming coach. So if you're into baseball and you're looking for a sport to watch during this slow time of year, that might be one for you. So I'll be tweeting about that, so you can follow me at the Bama Beat on Twitter. Oh, I'm sorry, X. Can't get used to that.
We still call
whatever you want to call. Yeah.
Hey, let's clear this up real quick. Your daughters gave me half point. You were 2-0 in favor of Rodg. Let's be clear. So.
Oh Lord.
And he asked this softball with the walk off. Yes, that was nice. It was nice. We were following along with that.
Outside of Twitter.
No, just Twitter right now. But you have a point. It's become I always call it a cesspool. There's certainly a lot of accounts I'd like to avoid on there, but the algorithm seems to throw them back at you.
Yeah. Randy's trying to get in on technicality. So I'm 3.5 down to a half point from the whole state of Georgia gave me half a point. It's still pretty sad. So, Bama Beat, last question. We're going to let you get off on this one. What is your record prediction, too early record prediction for Alabama next year?
I'll say 10-2. I think that get them in the playoff.
Yeah.
I think that's really where you got to be if we want to consider the year a success, because I think it's all about making the playoff this year. I think you can do it at 9-3, but you need some help.
Yeah. I don't want to be in that position again. So no. I like it. Yes, and I agree, y'all. Cesspool is a very, very good answer. So, man, like I said, we always appreciate it. You always bring some good knowledge. We're gonna have he's got to come to the barbecue or something. Somewhere you got to meet the twins. This is practically family.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, so, but I always appreciate you, man. Thank you. Thanks everybody in the comment section. We're not gonna ditch any of y'all. We love you guys. Anybody wants to send us a call, it's not going to voicemail. We got you.
Oh, yeah.
But have a good night. Like we said, tomorrow night, check us out on the Run In podcast, WrestleMania for Dummies, with Rodg being the dummy, and somebody else will be with them. And then Friday night, we'll still have an NBA special NBA playoff special. And then Saturday night, Herb and Rodg Unhinged After Dark.
Yes. 7:30 p.m.
Yeah. So we'll get a little crazy and recap what else is going on. Maybe we'll have some portal news to talk about. Maybe we'll just sit there and insult each other for an hour. Who knows? Y'all have a great night, everybody, and roll tide.
Roll tide.
Thanks, guys.